almost 100 people joining today.
Cool, cool.
I guess that's because of you being hosted here today. So every now and then I need to check the list of participants. And then we start. Sorry for the small delay, but I had some issues with my laptop. It wouldn't show my video, so I need to change computer. Oh, wow. That's the biggest audience of a webinar hosted by Creative Words.
Okay.
I'm very excited. No pressure at all, okay? No pressure at all. Hello, everybody. Let's start. What do you say, Francesca? Let's start. Yeah. Can you hear me well?
I can.
Okay, great. I keep admitting people. It's growing and growing. But no pressure, okay?
Of course.
So let me just grab a glass. Okay. Yeah, I think we should start. We've been delayed a little bit, but we should start.
Let's do it.
Wow. Yeah, people are still coming. Hello, everybody. That's the very first spotlight webinar for us. I've been thinking about to introduce this webinar today, this series. I didn't find the ideal way to do that, but last year we had a series of interviews with many people in the industry who was focused on an Italian audience. It was in Italian, and Francesca was one of the most trusted attendees. I think you missed only one, if I'm not mistaken. So it was really a good way to start this series. Also because Francesca has something to share with us, which is interesting, coming up soon. So the series is, we wanted to start with video games because I think it's one of the industries that last year suffered the less from the COVID. I hear very good things in this area. It's really a fun industry to be in. And then glad to see so many people really working in the industry in the audience. That makes me excited. And so we started with Francesca because she was one of the most trusted attendees, and we will talk about localization also, but the idea is not to only talk about localization. We really want to touch on many different topics and areas. So we will not be talking always about localization, which of course is my love job and I love it. I love localization, but we want to also involve other roles in the industries that we'll be touching on. So February is the video game month. In March, we'll be talking about e-commerce and retail. And then we have many other industries coming in. Just a little bit of instructions, which we all are acquainted with by now. I would suggest we are all muted. I will put me on mute when Francesca is talking as well, so that we don't hear any sounds. And you can raise your hand or use the chat to ask questions. I'll be asking questions to Francesca myself. Or if you want, you can even activate your camera and be live. I would love it to be interactive as much as possible. And that's basically it. It's really meant to be a conversation with the guests. And let's start with Francesca. I will not spend any more on you because I think you are the best in this yourself. So let's get started.
Okay, thank you, Diego. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be the first one of this new series. I promise I won't miss the rest of the series, as I did not miss, the previous one. Thanks everyone for joining us. I see there are a few familiar faces. So the game localization industry is big, but it's quite small. We kind of know each other. To introduce myself briefly, I'm Francesca. I'm from Italy. I have been in the localization industry for 11 years. I actually started in February, 11 years ago. And I have worked for several years, 10 years. I worked in several companies, first on the client side of the game localization industry. I worked as an intern at Wuga. I worked as a translator at Big Point. I worked as a project manager at EA, and I worked as a program manager at Alpha when I moved to the service provider side. So so basically, game localization is the only thing I know about. So, and that's why I'm asked to, you know, talk at events, organize events, and teach classes. I wouldn't be able to, you know, talk about anything else. No, all jokes aside, I have been in this industry for a long time. I'm still learning, especially since I started taking care of Game Global. We will talk about that later. Because I'm exposed to a lot of stories, a lot of you know, people sharing about their problems, about their best practices, and obviously I'm not going to disclose, you know, any secrets about what other companies are doing, but it's you know, it's a very good position to be in, and I'm learning a lot, and I can share a lot of knowledge.
I think you're being too modest in saying that video game localization is the only thing you know, but if it is like that, I think you know it very good. I want to mention that you also teach, you train video game in the next generation of localizers, right?
Exactly.
Just a little bit of promotion for you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's something that we didn't used to have. For example, when I was studying, it's a pretty new thing that all of this knowledge about game localization is being standardized, and it's being shared. So it's very exciting for students and other people who have been in the localization industry but are not familiar with games.
Yeah, would you mind if I posted the link on the chat so that people can have a look?
Please.
I want to mention this because one of my project managers recently attended a course. She was like enthusiastic, she was excited, she's talking about that all the time. So I want to pass the excitement to other people as well. So let me paste it there. Yeah, this makes me proud, not just because I'm Italian, probably. Nationalism, probably. I have some, when I was preparing for this webinar, I asked some questions around my context. And one of the things that I was asked is about when you don't have the budget to localize, for instance. If you don't mind, I will get started with this question.
Yeah.
So many times I've heard, I don't have the budget to localize my video game. What should I do? How could I prioritize the languages? Or is there a way to save money? And one of the things when you talk about saving money is, of course, machine translation, AI, and all this kind of stuff. What about machine translation and AI in the video game industry? What do you think? Is there a positive side of that, or what's your opinion?
Right. So depending on what your expectations are in terms of quality and in terms of territories that you want to reach, if you're a game developer and you don't have a budget for localization, machine translation can be a solution. But again, you know, you have to know what the challenges are, right? And what the result is going to be. So if it's just a matter of having the content somehow in different languages, of course, machine translation helps, but it's not something that we use in the industry raw, as you know, as you say, without post editing. You have to post edit, and I'm not sure that post-editing is necessarily cheaper than translating from scratch, depending on your product. And again, as I was saying, depending on your expectations on quality. It's rare that you see that the whole game is machine translated or machine translated and post-edited. I think it's probably happening more and more as, you know, machine translation is getting better, and it takes less effort to do the post-editing. For sure, there are some parts of the games or some content related to the video games that is more suitable for machine translation. We always say, you know, it's content that is not super sensitive, it's not super creative, perhaps is, you know, it's related to legal text or system messages. But again, depending on the system, you don't want to risk machine translation, because if you have to go to, you know, first party submission and there are mistakes in the localization, it's going to cost you money. So it's something that can help partially, but you have to know what you're doing and you have to be aware of the risks.
Yeah, you mentioned something that is really interesting to me. The machine translation is always associated with saving costs, right? So the customers want to save costs and to save money, and they do for machine translation. But it's actually not like that. I mean, if you want to invest in a very structured and machine translation program, you don't really save that much money, I would say, and since it's like that in video games, because that does not just the let's say outsourcing part, supply chain. There's also a lot of work upfront. Right?
Exactly. Well, unless you use something that, you know, is out of the box and you don't have to do any customization on it, so you're not training or buying your own engine, maybe you can save on, you know, you can save something, but it's, as I was saying, it's really rare that someone just does that without, you know, just takes that kind of risk without trying to customize or without trying to do something in-house first.
I see. Well, I believe 2020 has been, well, it's been a different year. We've heard that many times with the COVID and so on. So one of the reasons we started with video games is because I believe, that's what I hear, that the video game space hasn't been hurt by the COVID so much. I mean, I keep hearing success stories. Many people are staying home, of course, and they're using video games more and more and more. And there's a sort of an analogy with localization. I mean, localization has been a very resilient industry to the COVID. Do you think that this trend, this growth, will continue for the video game space in the future?
Definitely.
Now that I hope that we get back to normal at some point. I have 2 kids and they keep like playing all the time video games. And hopefully they will get to you know, to play outside at some point with the summer coming and the COVID disappearing. But I think that that's been a change that it's difficult to revert, probably.
Yes, so I think the you know, the trend towards playing more and more video games will continue with or without COVID. And 2020 was a success year for games because the industry didn't stop. And we didn't see any, you know, major difference in terms of quality of the games. But there are some worries in that sense. So that might change because, you know, the fact that the teams cannot work closely together can be a problem depending on, you know, which part of the development process you are in. So localization was already outsourced. It has been outsourced and, you know, and performed in many different settings and with teams very far away from each other for a long time. But there are other parts of the process that are probably not, that won't be able to adjust as well. For example, in terms of, I don't know, art or game design, where you need a team that works closely together.
Okay, there's a comment saying that my audio is very bad. I'm so sorry for that. It's due to the issues I was having before. Hope it's better like that. Okay. Okay, sorry, I interrupted you. Can you still? Okay. So you mentioned some parts of the process that are more difficult to be done like remotely. When I think about video game localization, in the experience I have, there's audio included as well, right? So there are studios and actors and voiceover specialists that are included in this process. Do you think that video game industry has been able to adapt to the new situation and solve the issues of, you know, having the voice recording remotely rather than having studios?
Yes, so as we were saying, for 2020, the industry coped, and also the game localization industry coped, and the games were recorded. It is also true that many of the games that were released in 2020 had been in the pipeline for a longer time. So it's possible that a lot of the recordings had happened before. But I know that studios were able to adapt. I know that actors built their own recording studios at their place. Sometimes the quality was not great, and it was not something that could be solved, with post-production. But in general, the results were surprising, and that's going to change the industry for sure.
So do you mean that we will adapt our expectations to maybe a different quality in audio and video localization?
No, I mean that I mean that it's possible to provide the same level of quality in a different setting. So with, slightly less professional studios or home-made studios.
Okay, I see what you mean. Okay, thank you very much.
And I think if I may add something here, one other field in the game localization industry that we didn't expect could cope as well was the QA, or the linguistic QA. Traditionally, it has been impossible to perform LQA outside offices, or because you have to, the devices have to be in a certain environment. The IPs have to be whitelisted and all these sorts of things. And even that was possible, during 2020, testing from outside the office. So in that sense, the industry is definitely going to change.
And stay like this now, I guess.
Sorry, I didn't get the last one.
Yeah, so you are confirming the issues with the audio. I will get it solved, okay? Very soon. No, I was saying stay like that. So it's adapting and it will not change back. Well,
it's a process, and we are discussing, where this is going. It's not clear that it will stay like this, but the feeling is that there have been some changes that are not going to change, are not going to get reverted.
Okay, I see, absolutely. Do you want to spend some words on the other thing that I want to promote here as well, which is the upcoming Game Global Digital Summit?
Right. So for those who are not familiar with Game Global used to be part of LocWorld. I'm pretty sure that everyone is familiar with LocWorld, and it started I think about probably 12 or around 15 years ago as the Game Localization Roundtable at Lockworld. And then the people who were involved in that thought that there was a potential to create a separate event about video game localization. Also QA was added, both linguistic QA and functional QA was added to the menu. And the event grew bigger and bigger. Obviously, last year we had to go online, like every other event. And this year we're doing it again. The next Game Global Digital Summit is happening on March 2nd and 3rd, and the program is already available. Diego will also be part of the program as moderator, so that's, you know, one more reason to fix the audio the audio issues.
There are many better reasons to come.
Yes, and Creative Works is also one of the sponsors. Thanks a lot for that. So it's, you know, all these questions that you're asking about video game localization, we ask ourselves, you know, in the team, in the advisory board, and we invite speakers from other companies to present on these topics. And a lot of that will be discussed at Game Global.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm having someone getting a better headset for me. I'm so sorry for that. So hopefully it will get better soon. I'm so embarrassed. No, I had to move to another computer and I was not able to do that. Okay, thank you. Okay. So, is it any better?
It's louder.
It's louder. Yeah, thank you, Alexis, for commenting. This is yet another thing that 2020 brought our way, headset problems in conferences. Yeah, yeah, that's true. Thank you. A bit better. It's louder. I would like to check if the audience has questions for Francesca. No, thank you, and thank you messages, but it's me thanking you, and I apologize for this. Yeah, I have a problem with the room, absolutely. But as I said, I had to move to another room because my laptop wouldn't work with the camera. I don't know why. So I was wondering if the audience might have any question for Francesca already, or we're gonna go ahead with our conversation. Okay. I have a question for you. What's the main challenge that you foresee for the video game industry in the next years? Not, yeah, that's unexpected, I know.
Remember, I only know about video game localization.
Okay, let's talk about video game localization. What's the main challenge that you foresee in video game localization? You know, one of the biggest challenges that comes to your mind in relation to that for next years, the upcoming years?
I think we have been facing the same challenge for a few years now. We have more and more content and more games that need to be localized in a shorter period of time. So, you know, we need technology to help with that. We need to improve relationships with vendors, for example, to help with that, because it's not, you know, localization used to be a phase of the development of the game that would have a start and you know, and an end date, and now it's a continuous process, and it happens every day. So that's a big challenge. That's a big challenge also for you know, for the vendors and the people who are involved directly with the localization process, because of because of rates, because of budgets, they're shrinking, but the quality expectation stays the same. So it's not possible to deliver lower quality, not even with machine translation, not even with the lower budget. You have to, keep the super high standards that we have for video games.
Thank you. So it's my understanding that we should not fear any decrease in video game localization, right? I mean, that's not an industry that I foresee we'll see lowering volumes in the future.
I don't think so. I think what might change is the languages that are involved and the territories that companies will choose to localize their games for.
And this is probably strictly bound to the availability of, for instance, of the internet connection. That's a topic, I guess, because talking about my kids, they're playing a specific video game all the time. My boy most, and every day there's an update, and it keeps. I live in a small village, and it keeps like downloading, and it gets mad. It's taking me ages to download this upgrade. So I would guess that in many territories, many areas, many regions of the world, there would be places where some video games are not widespread because of the digital divide, if you want to call it like that. So you talked about selecting new languages or different languages. What do you think? Where do you see the video game industry is going in terms of areas in the world?
So right now there's a lot of talking about India, for example, and it would be a huge market because for localization specifically, for localization specifically because there are a lot of languages, even if it's just one country. So there's more and more talk about India, and we've seen different phases in the past. I think I started when Latin, Spanish and Brazilian Portuguese were starting to be explored, and then it was I can't remember, either Turkish or Arabic, and then either Turkish or Arabic, and now we're moving to different areas. And obviously there's a lot. So also one shift I've seen in the last few years is that with China producing more and more games, the source language right now is often Chinese, which is a challenge for developers. There's a lot of adapting to do there. And I think it was probably a bit easier in the past, without mentioning English, but if you compare, for example, Japanese with Chinese as a source language, with Japan, the companies have a different way of working. Processes are a bit slower, and there is more time to perform localization. With China, everything is so fast, and everything is so competitive, and that's becoming more of a challenge for the industry.
Wow, I see. There's a question coming from the audience from Teresa. What do you think about the improvement of neural empathy through training? Is Game Global focusing on that, maybe covering this topic?
Yes, so we do cover neural machine translation every year. We have been in the last 3 or 4 years. We've had Electronic Arts presenting for a few years in a row because they are really, pioneering this topic as a game localization department. And this year it's going to be part of the program as well, but a different company is going to present. It's going to be Playrix.
And that's the one I'm hosting, right? Moderating.
Oh, true. Sorry, that way. Yes.
Yeah, you forgot. You forgot. Well, machine translation, I guess, is a topic. I've been listening to Christina from the podcast many times, and they are pioneering this, as you said. But it's becoming a topic, and the fact that another company that I've heard of, and I'm not a player, but I've heard of this company since long time ago, is getting machine translation. I guess they should tell us something about the fact that machine translation is really entering the conversation in the game, right?
Exactly, and I mean, as it's entering the conversation everywhere. We were having this discussion the other day when we were preparing the event. I'm also a translator, and I mean, as a translator right now, I don't want to work without machine translation, and it doesn't mean that I'm, you know, just copying and pasting sentences that are translated by the engine. That there is work that the translator needs to do on that, but I think right now it's one more tool that we have at our disposal, and it makes all the sense in the world to use it.
I can see some translators in the audience. And yesterday, when we were preparing this talk, you mentioned that, okay, you do post-editing, but you cannot stand doing that for a long time.
Right.
You spend some words on that.
Yes. So I think so. There are two different ways to do to use machine translation. As far as I'm concerned, there might be many more.
Sorry for the interruption. It's very interesting for buyers as well, for publishers, for companies that like asking for post-editing to vendors, right? They should know what it is about and what it entails, and also the efforts that it takes.
Yeah. So this is my very personal take. I don't know if other translators will agree. I think it also depends on your skills and where you stand as an editor, for example, or as a reviewer. I'm more of a translator at heart. I prefer to, you know, work from scratch. I don't really like editing or reviewing. I have to say this. So basically, when I use machine translation, if I have to do post-editing on something that is on, you know, it's already populated in the tool, so the whole document is already translated, I find it very stressful and very time-consuming. If I can use machine translation as I use the translation memory, so for suggestions, that's very useful for me and helps me a lot and makes me go a lot faster. Not faster compared, not only compared to post editing, faster in the, you know, in the translation process.
Even compared with translation.
Even compared, sorry.
With translation, if translation was scratch.
Yeah, yeah.
How would you call it? Augmented translation. There are many ways to call that, right? When you use machine translation as the like side of translation memory.
Yes.
Yeah, that's.
I want to say I'm not an expert in this because, you know, for a very long time I was a project manager and then I was a team manager, so I wasn't really deep into you know, how the tools work or how the, you know, the engines work, because I was seeing things from a different point of view. But now, you know, I'm hands-on on that, and I'm starting to see some perks and some flaws to the use of that.
And Jessica agrees that using MT as a suggestion adds working faster, and I do agree. I do agree. So you've seen an increase in that as well. Machine translation, right?
Yes, and the engines are improving.
Yeah. There's a question coming that I want to ask you straight away from Nick. Thank you, Nick. You mentioned localization budget efficiency. So I wonder where there are, if there are any reports that show how choosing various forms and scope of localization can affect important game metrics like player acquisition, retention, and monetization. How do you measure that?
Right. So with the games now being fully digital and the so how easy it is to gather data from your users, and it's not something that companies are doing illegally. That's that's the way it works. You can potentially get reports on any topics of your choosing, and there's a lot. I mean, it's been this way for a long time. For example, when you as a company, when you have to decide which languages to localize, you obviously look at this kind of reports from previous games or from competitors to understand, how localization influences monetization and sales and all these sorts of things. And there are companies that are building departments around this, because this kind of data is more and more important and more strategic.
So questions are coming. Thank you so much. Let me go to the other one.
That's my question.
Just a second. Okay, I'd like to know your thoughts. Thank you, Alexis. Your thoughts on some localization tools in video games engines, such as localization dashboard in Unreal and localization tools in Unity. Do you think these are beneficial for translators or developers?
Are beneficial for developers or right. So I want to say I'm not an expert, because when so I've never been involved in the use of these tools on an engine level. What I can say is that it's definitely useful for developers, because if the the tools for localization are already in the engine or are provided by the engine provider, they're going to pay more attention to localization. There are going to be less mistakes. There are going to be fewer mistakes. There are going to be fewer of those problems that usually hinder the localization process. So it's definitely an advantage for developers. For translators, they are probably going to see assets that are in a better shape and are going to have to ask fewer questions. So in terms of, I think this variable is broken, or can you give me more context about this kind of things? Because there are also more tools. This is not necessarily part of Unity, but there are more and more ways for translators to also see the context together with the text. So indirectly, it's an advantage for translators as well.
It was very politically correct answer. I don't know these tools myself, but I believe that there's this fight between developers and the translators in terms of tools, because when tools are developed for translators, they're not useful for developers and the other way around. So
exactly.
I suppose that's the conversation.
And to be honest, the developer doesn't have to know about what a translator is doing, really, or the other way around. So it's definitely a good thing that the tools for localization are present in the engine itself.
Yeah. There's another question from Teresa. Thank you, Teresa. Do you see a big difference in quality standards depending on the target language or target market?
So in general, I'm going to say no, because everyone wants to have the best quality. There are some obvious exceptions. that we always mention also in the, when we teach classes, when you translate into Japanese, for example, there is a lower tolerance for any sort of mistakes, and the companies can go, it can have real trouble if the localization is not very high quality. And yes, so and also there are some countries that there are some companies that choose to have a stronger presence in some strategic countries to make sure that the localization is really top quality, and that's often the case with Southeast Asia. So some companies would externalize their would outsource their localization, meaning the translation, the recordings are done by vendors, but then they will have internal people in country to make sure that the quality is really right for that kind of audience.
Thank you so much. Next question. Thank you, keep them coming. Absolutely. So Lorenzo, as far as I've seen, localization, video game localization world is as fascinating as it is complicated to get into. Do you maybe have any tips or suggestions to people that would like to become game localizers like you?
Right. So this is a topic that we also discuss quite often at Game Global. We had a webinar about it in December. I think the most common way for people to get into the game localization industry is being a translator, because that's one of the few disciplines related to games that you can actually study at university. But there are other positions as well that can get you closer to the game localization industry. And I think the most interesting one is testing, localization testing. So if you are a native speaker of a language that is not English, and I'm saying this because most of the games are going to be developed in English, you can apply for a job as a tester, either in-house or remote. So what you do there is you play the games following certain instructions, and then you have to report bugs. And that's a good way to start your career with games. It's also possible to start directly as a project manager for translation. There are a lot of companies, especially on the service provider side, that hire also junior project managers with very little experience. So that's also a good way. And then as you progress, from tester, you can be a manager of a whole department, or you can become a localization engineer. So a localization engineer is not necessarily a trained engineer, because the term engineer is very broad. It's more, it can be, depending on on the company, it can be more of a technical project manager that is an expert in translation tools.
Amazing, thank you. There's a question coming from Fernando, which is really interesting. If I were a video game translator, I would be as scared as by the community as another would be by reviews from readers, I guess. So the question is, has it ever happened to you that you had to edit or improve a translation of a game that had already been released, maybe after some negative feedback from the users and the gamers? Because I know they're very fighting, and they're very passionate about commenting and giving feedback.
No, it hasn't happened to me like that, but it has happened to me when I was an in-house translator, that someone would come from community management. So they were sitting next to us, and say, I think you have to change this translation because users are complaining. Or users would say, this doesn't need to be translated, because if you translate it, I don't understand what it is. I understand it better if it's if the name stays in English or in German or whatever. Back in the day, I used to translate from German. I used to translate video games from German.
Okay. Okay. Reading questions. Okay. Can you recommend? Thank you, Roshni. Do you want to, since you are up there commenting, asking questions, would you like to ask your question live, like talking? Yeah. Then just unmute yourself.
Yes, sure. Sure. Thank you for that opportunity. It's really very interesting. So my question is, can you recommend any forums or groups that me, for example, like a translation service provider, can join specifically related to game localization? I'm thinking of a trade fair kind of thing where I could meet like potential companies who do this kind of work.
And it's not because it's my event, not my company. But
easy one.
I think it's Game Global. There might be other forums or other websites. I think probably Chiara, since we're involving people from the audience, Chiara might know more than me. I'm not a very social person in the sense that connected on social media or this kind of things. But yes, so with Game Global, it's just about localization, and we do take all suggestions from our followers and our audience. We do take them seriously, in the sense that if we see that there's a need to talk about a certain topic, it's very likely that it's going to be at our next conference, or we're gonna even build a webinar around it.
Okay, so that was actually my last question, which I think got missed. The summit is specifically about the language industry, like localization, right? Or is
yes,
it general game production?
No, it's about localization, functional QA, and localization QA.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So you mentioned Chiara. I don't know if she has. There are 3 Chiaras, so I suspect who it is.
Chiara, I can see. I don't know her surname, but I can see she goes by Chiara Loquace.
Oh yeah. Do you have something to add to this conversation?
Hi, thank you for letting me join. Well, actually, it depends on which kind of social you usually attend. So there are groups on Discord, there are groups on Facebook. It really depends what you're comfortable with. Usually it is easy. You just search for the keywords and you might bump into some useful group. Then I do not really know if I can mention any now. Since I don't want to make advertisement for any other group, but Discord, I would say that lately has lots of groups going on. So maybe it might be a good way to start searching, maybe. As Francesca said, I'm not a very social person myself, so maybe you didn't really ask the right person.
I know that I see you're quite active on social media.
Yeah.
Sorry if I
no, it's not a problem. I share them. I know that they exist, but I am not really involved inside those groups. Sometimes I participate, but not that much because, as you said, I'm not very social. And so I do not really know the quality and what they do, if they organize anything, if those advices are very useful or not for the industry. So my advice is to keep searching and see what is your favorite way to join those kind of groups. I hope this helps.
Thank you. Thank you, Das. I have a question for you that's coming from me. Sorry for asking that. So there are many big companies out there doing video game localization. they take care of the whole process from the start to the end, including audio, including video, including everything. And you know what I'm talking about. I mean, those big companies, and they do an amazing job. And then there are smaller companies like Nicola's company, maybe smaller, but they do an amazing job of taking care of the whole process as well. For language service providers, not just for translators, for smaller companies that want to get in this industry, the video game industry, do you suggest they offer the whole thing, or they focus maybe just on translation, for instance?
Sorry, I got distracted. I hope
Okay,
it was not a question for me.
It was indeed.
Sorry. Someone shared a very interesting link. Sorry.
Okay, no problem at all. No, I was wondering, for companies that want, for language service provider that wants to get into the game industry, localization industry, do you think they should offer the whole package, or they should focus maybe just translation or just the language part and avoid offering audio, video, art, and so on?
I think both strategies work. There are so the market is big enough and diverse enough and it needs both approaches. So there are companies that definitely want the whole package. So they want to give you, you know, full access to their. They don't have a lock team, and they need someone who takes care of the whole thing. There are other companies that are okay with splitting the work, and not only in terms of functions, but also in terms of languages. And yes, so I think both ways are still working, and then it's your decision based on your budget, your client portfolio, if you can offer all services, if it's worth it for you to offer all services, or if you want to specialize. I can think of very successful companies that are specializing, and very successful companies that are doing everything.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask what I believe will be the last question for you today. It's almost 6 here in Italy, and the question is coming from Alberto. Given the current situation regarding the pandemic, how do you think the industry will deal with information leaks versus working from home scenarios, mainly in relation to the competitive AAH scene?
I think so. Information leaks are nothing new. If anything, it's easier now for companies to know where the leak is and who is responsible. I don't think working from home is necessarily going to, you know, make the situation worse. People are really aware of that, are aware of the consequences. The consequences are really, really heavy. So it's I don't think the pandemic and working from home will worsen the situation.
Okay, then I have another question, since you were fast enough. Mark is asking, is it possible to land a job in the game localization industry without a degree specifically in translation? In other words, and I think this is a very personal question for you, is the degree in foreign languages and cultures enough?
Yes, if you are a gamer. So
Okay.
if you want to be part of the game localization industry, you can either be an expert in localization, expert or familiar with localization, or be a gamer, or both, you know, as a way to get in. So if you're not necessarily specialized in translation, but you are a gamer and you understand about cultures or culture specific problems, you have good chances to get in.
I agree, you know. Nick, there's a question which I think is gonna would be taking too much to answer. But Francesca, if it's okay with you, I can forward the question, and maybe we can deal with that later, because it's 1 minute to the end, and I wanted to thank you properly for coming here today. I want to apologize for the many issues that we had technically, from my headset to people not being able to join. I believe my Zoom account had some issues. There's a cap of 100 participants, which I believed I removed, but probably I didn't. So I think some people might have not joined because of that, and I really apologize. But that's going to be on the recording, and tomorrow there will be a big post, and apologies for myself. I think worldwide apologies. I'm so sorry for that. But you know, it's the first time we were 100 participants, so that's amazing. So I'm also excited and sorry, excited and sorry. I'm both. So I wanted to thank you, Francesca, for being here, and to remind everyone that we both will be at the Game Global Digital Summit in a month or so. So we'll be there. I hope to see you there, and I'm sure it's been interesting. It's not been too much prepared on my side as well. So hope it was good enough for all of you. And yeah, in a couple of weeks, we'll be having another amazing speaker. I promise it's amazing. I cannot disclose by now, but it's going to be amazing. But in 1 month, I don't remember the exact day, I'll be at Digital Summit, Game Global Digital Summit with Francesca and a lot of amazing people. So see you there, and keep following us if you are interested in this amazing industry. Thank you, Francesca, for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really happy that we had so many people, and I hope what we discussed
we could have more,
interesting.
We could have more, but let's blame Zoom, okay? There will be a recording available also very soon. So hopefully people will be able to catch up with the recording.
Okay. Blaming Zoom is so 2020, dear. You have to find
yeah, we have to invent something else.
Hi, thank you.
Ciao, Nicola. Ciao. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Ciao, Francesca. Thank you so
ciao,
much.
Ciao.
Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.